Go ahead and turn your Bibles to Nehemiah 12. Nehemiah chapter 12. We made it to verse 27. So tonight we are going to try, God willing, to finish the book of Nehemiah. So, verse 27, chapter 12. And at the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, they sought the Levites in all their places, to bring them to Jerusalem to celebrate the dedication with gladness, with thanksgivings, and with singing, with cymbals, harps, and lyres. The sons of the singers gathered together from the districts surrounding Jerusalem and from the villages of the Netophathites, also from Beth Gilgal and from the region of Geba and Asmaveth. For the singers had built for themselves villages around Jerusalem. And the priests and the Levites purified themselves, and they purified the people and the gates and the wall. Now, what we have seen last week, and even the week before, is Nehemiah is doing everything he can to get the Levites involved in the life of Judah. They need to be central. The Levitical line and all that they do and all that they represent and all that they stand for, they need to be the central focus and figures in Judean life. People need to think about them, go to them, call upon them. They need to be active. That needs to be the centerpiece of everything they are and everything they do. It's all the Levites and the priests and all the people we're going to see named here. And so as they prepare to dedicate the wall, they need to do it with all of these people. And they go out and they make sure all the Levites in all the rounds surrounding Jerusalem are contacted and know when they're going to get together and dedicate these walls. It's a big deal that they be there. It's a big deal that they lead it. It's a big deal that they participate. It's a big deal that they do all the things that they do. We're going to see all the things that they do. God is leading Nehemiah and Ezra to lead the people and all the Levites, the priests, etc., to realize this is my position here. My position is central to Judean life, to our lifestyle, to our future. What I do is important. What I do is important. And the thing is, when you begin to go backwards, the thing that's absent to somewhere in the time of King Solomon is a Levitio, I'm going to make up a word here. Ready? A Levitiocentric not worldview necessary, but the centrality of the Levite and Levitical system in Judah and Israel. And the result of that is paganism. The result of that is them worshiping, well, you know, you've heard it now for almost 3 years. They've worshipped everything. And so when the Levites stopped being a factor in their life, in all that they are and do, which they should have been, they began to worship everything and nothing. So, at the dedication of the wall in Jerusalem, they sought the Levites. They sought the Levites in all their places, everywhere that they lived, to bring them to Jerusalem. They wanted to bring them to Jerusalem to celebrate the dedication with gladness, with thanksgiving, with singing, with cymbals, harps, and lyres. And the sons of the singers gathered together from the districts surrounding Jerusalem and from the villages of the Netophathites, also from Beth Gilgal and from the region of Geba and Asmaveth. For the singers had built for themselves villages around Jerusalem. And the priests and the Levites purified themselves, and they purified the people and the gates and the wall. So they got themselves ready, they got the people ready, they got the singers ready, they got their cymbals and harps and lyres. They prepared to celebrate. Now remember, they're coming to celebrate a wall. The temple has been dedicated. They're coming to celebrate a wall. There's no infrastructure in the wall. They're still chopping trees down in the wall. But they're here to celebrate and dedicate this wall that was put up in these short days. So Nehemiah says, I brought the leaders of Judah up onto the wall and appointed 2 great choirs that gave thanks. One went to the south on the wall and to the dung gate. And after them went Hoshea. And half of the leaders of Judah, Azariah, Ezra, Meshullam, Judah, Benjamin, Shemaiah, Jeremiah, and certain of the priests' sons, with trumpets. So he begins to get the choirs together on the wall. The walls are 9 feet wide. They have their trumpets. They get the choir together, and they split the choir up full of Levites playing the trumpets, have all these different musical instruments, choirs, trumpeters. They're on the wall with musical instruments of David, the man of God, and Ezra, the scribe, went before them. So if we had that map again, you could follow them around the wall here. One group is going to go one way and one group is going to go the other way, and they're going to meet in the middle. So the other choir of those who gave thanks went to the north. And I followed them with half the people on the wall above the tower of the ovens to the broad wall, and above the gate of Ephraim, and by the gate of Yeshana, and by the fish gate, and the tower of Hananel, and the tower of the 100, to the sheep gate. And they came to a halt at the gate of the guard. So both choirs of those who gave thanks stood in the house of God, and I and half the officials with me. So they walk from the bottom to the top, praising, worshiping, playing, singing. They get to the top. That's where the temple is. They come down from the wall. They go to the temple. And they give thanks at the temple. And all the officials with me. They're worshiping. The Levites and the priests are leading the worship. This is one of those times where you see music being used to lead in worship. Remember, worship is obedience. Without obedience, don't matter what singing's going on. This was a dedicatorial time for Israel. They're worshiping here with music. They're praising God with music. They're going all over the whole wall. They're being obedient to God's leadership in what He's led them to do. The priests, verse 41, Eliakim, and he's going to give you the list of the priests here, all the way to Ezer, verse 42. And the singers sang with Jezariah as their leader. And they offered great sacrifices that day. So here we are again. We're still with all what the Levites and the priests are doing. The Levites and the priests lead in worship. The Levites and the priests lead the people around the wall. The people all come out for the dedication of the wall. And now they are sacrificing. They offered great sacrifices that day. Lots and lots of sacrifices. And rejoiced. Here they are praising the Lord. The singers are singing. The trumpeters are trumpeting. The musicians are playing. It is just all over Jerusalem a worship time. They offered great sacrifices and rejoiced, for God had made them rejoice with great joy. Man, it's been a long time. Well, I don't know. It's been a long time. David coming into the city with the ark of God, they rejoiced. Everybody's rejoicing. Josiah leading Israel, because of the law, there was great rejoicing. Hezekiah, there was some rejoicing. But to genuinely, honestly settle in and recognize all that I am and all that I have is because Yahweh has given it to us. And here we are back again after all this time. It's hard for us to get in this head. You got to live it. It's hard. These people are they're born around what used to be Jerusalem. They've grown up, and what used to be Jerusalem has been a forest and a ruins, and there was a temple in the middle of the woods, and you've got priests that are not leading, don't know how. And you 80 years pass, and Ezra comes, and he brings priests with him. But he has to stop and leave them all at a camp and go back and dig some more priests up, if you remember. Because no priests had come with him. And now here they are, and they're the focal point because they're leading the people in obedience to God's law and worship here in Jerusalem. And they're not used to this. So this day they offer great sacrifices that day and rejoiced. The reason all this happened is that God had made them rejoice with great joy. Did God come in a cloud like at Mount Sinai and burn and churn and command them rejoice? No. God revealed Himself to them in such a degree of revelation from what they're hearing that they just rejoiced. They recognized that this is from God. This is God's hand All this, here we are back. Look at the walls. Look at the temple. Look at where we were 50, 70 days ago, however long this is when they finally dedicated the law. Look at where we've come from. Look at what we are. Look at what we've got. God's still with us. God made them rejoice with great joy. The women, the children also rejoiced. And the joy of Jerusalem was heard far away. Major shouting and singing and rejoicing on that day. Men were appointed. Now, I don't have time to deal with it, but that temple is full of rooms on the sides. We're going to see that here in a minute. That temple is full of storerooms. They kept their money in the temple. It was like the Fort Knox, the National Reserve. They kept their money here. They kept spices here and food here and wood in here. And I mean, the priests lived there. Some of them lived in the side rooms. The temple is a big deal. On that day, men were appointed over the storerooms. I mean, they hand out jobs and say, look, your job now, Mr. Levite, is that you're over the storerooms and you're going to keep this, and here's your storerooms. You keep them full. Whatever you've got to do, you keep them full. So, on that day, men were appointed over the storerooms, the contributions, the first fruits, and the tithes, together into the storerooms in the temple, into them, the portions required by the law for the priests and for the Levites, according to the fields of the towns. So you're to bring your goods to the storehouse. You're to bring your tithe to the storehouse. The tithe feeds the priests in the storehouse, in the temple. So the priests can be what they're supposed to be, and that is to be the central figures that lead worship for Judah. Judah rejoiced over the priests and the Levites who ministered. So there's another reason to rejoice. There's another reason to praise the Lord. Things are getting set up the way they should be, the way they should have been. We know, because of what we've studied these last years, that one time it took 2 months to clean out the storerooms in Solomon's temple. That's a bunch of pagan stuff. 2 months to clean it out. All the storerooms had pagan stuff, and storerooms were set up to worship different gods, and God only knows what went on inside that temple in all these side rooms and upstairs rooms, when they should have been storerooms that were there to provide for the Levites and the priests so that they can lead the people to worship Yahweh. That's not what happened at all. And now this is happening. They performed the service of their God, the service of purification, as did the singers and the gatekeepers. The singers, gatekeepers, according to the command of David and his son Solomon. For long ago, in the days of David and Asaph, there were directors of the singers, and there were songs of praise and thanksgiving to God. Until Solomon botched it all up, right? And his wives led him astray. And he began to build temples for his wives' gods. So all Israel in the days of Zerubbabel and in the days of Nehemiah, all Israel gave the daily portions for the singers and the gatekeepers And they set apart that which was for the Levites. Now you can throw priests in there. Every priest was a Levite. Not every Levite was a priest. Some Levites did this work. They weren't priests, but they were all Levites. And the Levites set apart that which was for the sons of Aaron. That which was for the sons of Aaron, the Levites, from the Aaronic line. So what you see here is really praiseworthy. Thank you, Lord, that you can see this. That they are focused on what they should be focusing on, and that is obeying God's law. And part of God's law is this happens. This happens. Tithes that are brought to the storehouse so the Levites can function and lead the people and disciple the people in God's law and make sacrifices and have the utensils ready and the water in the sea so they can wash the big basin, the humongous basin, so they can have firewood, etc., etc. Incense, bread, priests, Levites that go in and out of the temple in the holy place. Only one goes into the most holy place. So that all this will take place so that the people can come and focus on the attention of Yahweh the way it should have been, the way it should have always been. Okay, on that day, as this dedication is going on, they read from the book of Moses. Now I'm going to run to Deuteronomy 23, verse 3. It says, "No Ammonite or Moabite may enter the assembly of Yahweh, even to the 10th generation. None of them may enter the assembly of Yahweh forever, because they did not meet you with bread and with water on the way when they came out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam, the son of Beor, from Pethor of Mesopotamia, to curse you. But the Lord your God would not listen to Balaam. Instead, the Lord your God turned the curse into a blessing for you. Because Yahweh your God loved you, you shall not seek their peace or their prosperity all the days forever." No Moabite, no Edomite. On that day they read from the book of the law in the hearing of the people, and in it was found written that no Ammonite or Moabite should ever enter the assembly of God. For they did not meet the people of Israel with bread and water, but hired Balaam against them to curse them. Yet our God turned the curse into a blessing as soon as the people heard the law. They separated from Israel all those of foreign descent. And we've seen this in Ezra. It's happening again. It looks like this is way to a lesser degree, but it's happened again. Now before this, Eliashib the priest, who was appointed over the chambers of the house of God. Now listen, look at this. And who was related to Tobiah. Apparently it's by marriage. Eliashib the priest, who was appointed over the chamber of the house of our God, and who was related to Tobiah, prepared for Tobiah a large chamber where they had previously put the grain offering and frankincense, the vessels, and the tithes of grain, wine, and oil, which were given by commandment to the Levites, singers, gatekeepers, and the contributions for the priests. While this was taking place, Nehemiah writes, "I was not in Jerusalem, for in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, the king of Babylon, I went to the king And after some time, I asked leave of the king and came to Jerusalem. And then I discovered that the evil that Elisha had done for Tobiah. Tobiah, who said, if a fox jumps on the wall, it'll fall down. Tobiah, who tried to kill Nehemiah. They catch Nehemiah gone all the way back to Persia. And it's one of them. You got to be kidding me. This can't be happening. This didn't happen. And it did happen. If Tobiah can't stop the work, imagine the insanity of this priest moving him into the temple. Moving out a whole couple of rooms that were storerooms for the Levites and making an apartment for Tobiah to live in inside the temple. Nehemiah's gone. I want to know where in the world Ezra's at. I'll keep that to myself. Nehemiah's gone. He comes back and he finds out what Elisha, the high priest, has done for Tobiah. Apparently his in-law. Preparing for him a chamber in the courts of the house of God. And I was very angry. And I threw all the household furniture of Tobiah out of the chamber. You imagine that? Nehemiah comes back and somebody tells him, dude, you need to go to the temple and look at this. He goes to the temple and he checks it out and finds out, who is that? That's not Tobiah. Yeah, Tobiah's moved his family in here. This is where he lives now. I mean, I would need to rant and rave for 20 minutes to really come across and get this accurate. I mean, there's no way Tobiah is living in the temple of God, who's opposed everything as soon as he could, rode into town. He's been through this whole book, and there ain't been a positive thing about him. And the great high priest, his in-law, has moved him into the temple while Nehemiah's gone, and no one could stop him. Nehemiah proceeds to throw all his stuff out into the street. I would imagine he got a few priests and said, come with me, and we're going to throw it out. They threw it out and threw it out and threw it out and cleaned out the chamber. I gave orders that they cleanse the chambers. So they cleansed the chambers, and I brought back there the vessels of the house of God with the grain offering and the frankincense. That's what should be stored here, not Tobiah and his family. When the cat's away, bad things happen. I could belabor this. I look at this and I'm stunned that this happened. But it did happen. I also found out that the portions of the Levites, what was to be given to the Levites so the Levites could work in the temple, had not been given to them. So that, to the degree that the Levites and the singers who did the work had fled each to his field. They've left Jerusalem, they've left the temple, they've left their post, they've left their job, they've left what they should be doing. And now Nehemiah finds them, they're out working. They're trying to raise food for their family. They're trying to take care of their wife and kids. They've left to go farm because they don't have the storehouses that they have just been working on before Nehemiah left to go back to Persia. So I confronted the officials and said, why? Now listen to this sentence. Here's your one to underline right here. Why is the house of God forsaken? Why is the house of God forsaken? Boy, you could drag that to the New Testament. And here's the house of God, right here. You're looking at it. You could ask some questions for some people. Why have you forsaken the house of God? Why is the house of God forsaken? Forsaken. He confronts the officials and asks them that. He finds it out. Why is the house of God forsaken? And I gathered them together and set them in their stations. I would put here, again. Then all Judah, as the word gets out, and I don't know how they got it out, whatever they did to get the message out. All Judah did what they were doing before he left. Now they're doing it again. Brought the tithe. The tithe of grain, wine, and oil into the storehouses in the temple for the Levites, for the singers and the gatekeepers, for the priests and Levites who had all these different jobs. I appointed as treasurers over the storehouses Shelemiah the priest, Zadok the scribe, and Pedaiah of the Levites. And as their assistant Hanan, the son of Zachar, son of Mattaniah, for they were considered reliable. And their duty was to distribute all of this goods to their brothers, the other Levites, so they could lead Israel to focus their attention on Yahweh in obedience and worship and discipling. I heard a guy this week, I was listening to a guy who I really, really respect, and he took verse 14 and he did something really weird with it, and I'm not going to do that, but here's verse 14. Remember me, O my God, concerning this, and do not wipe out my good deeds. For I have done for the house of God, of my God, I have done for the house of my God and for his servants. Remember what I've done for the house of my God and for his servants. We're going to see that again, but in the last 7 words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Remember me in the book of Nehemiah. He says it again, remember me, O my God, for good. Remember me. This guy sort of puts a negative slant to it. And this guy's way smarter than me. And I've looked at this and analyzed this and pondered this. I don't see a negative slant here. I don't see Nehemiah being Americanized or Canadianized from this guy that I was listening to. He is trying to hold this mess together. He's trying to lead them, being a non-Levitical person, not a priest, not a Levite. He's trying to lead them to stick, to stand, to lead, to not leave, to have a spine. To have a spine and run out people like Tobiah. And he comes before God after he's done this. This is exhausting. What he's had to go through and do. And he just prays, God, remember me concerning this. Do not wipe out my good deeds that I have done for the house of my God and for his service. Remember me. Remember this. Remember what I've done. Remember. I don't see a negative there. In those days I saw in Judah, those days when I get back from Persia, I saw in Judah people treading wine presses. Well, that's a good thing. Notice, on the Sabbath. That's a bad thing. And bringing in heaps of grain and loading them on donkeys, and also wine, grapes, figs, and all kinds of loads, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. Their focus, that what they've been doing is they've been treating God's day like any other day. They've been treating the Sabbath day like it was Monday. They've been treating the Sabbath day as if it meant nothing, as if there was no commandment to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Here's a discipling moment. The Sabbath day is holy, and you're not to do these things on the Sabbath day. You're not to buy, you're not to sell, you're not to work. You're to set that day aside to rest and focus your attention on God. That's the day. They're not doing it, and I warned them on the day when they sold food. Tyrians also, who lived in the city, brought in fish and all kinds of goods and sold them on the Sabbath to the people of Judah, in Jerusalem itself. And I confronted the nobles of Judah and said to them, "What is this evil thing that you're doing?" I mean, they've got vendors things set up and little tents set up and little hovels set up. And they've come in and they come into Jerusalem and they're selling and buying and working on the Sabbath when the focus is that big building up on top of the hill. And what it represents. And a part of what's in that box in that building up on the hill says, honor the Sabbath day. Remember the Sabbath day. Keep it holy. Set it aside. It's not common. What are you doing? What is this evil thing you're doing? Profaning the Sabbath day. Did not your fathers act this way? And did not our God bring all this disaster on us and on this city? Look around. It's a blessed forest still. Go look over the wall where it used to be a city. It's a forest. There's some new things going up, but it's still a forest. Now you are bringing more wrath on Israel by profaning the Sabbath? As soon as it began to grow dark at the gates of Jerusalem before the Sabbath, Friday night, Nehemiah's like, I'm going to fix this. I commanded that the doors should be shut and gave orders that they should not be opened until after the Sabbath. And I stationed some of my servants at the gates that no load might be brought in on the Sabbath day. Then the merchants and sellers of all kinds of wares lodged. They lived. They set up camp outside Jerusalem once or twice. But I warned them and said to them, why do you lodge outside the wall? If you do this again, if you do so again, I'm going to come and kick your hiney. If you do so again, I will lay hands on you. I will lay hands on you. I'm going to come in. You don't want me coming over this wall. From that time on, they did not come on the Sabbath. Then I commanded the Levites that they should purify themselves and come and guard the gates to keep the Sabbath day holy. Remember this also in my favor, O my God, and spare me according to the greatness of your steadfast love, your grace, your hesed. Spare me. I will do dumb things, but remember when I do dumb things, remember today. I'm doing everything I know to keep the Sabbath day holy, to keep out people that don't care about you, don't care about your law, don't care about your temple. They don't care about sacrificing to you, being obedient to you, worshiping you, honoring you. Remember that, please. In those days, I also saw Jews who had married women of Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. Verse 24 is another one to underline with your pencil. This is tragic. And half their children spoke the language of Ashdod, and they could not speak the language of Judah-Hebrew. When your child has been so paganized that he knows the language of the world better than he knows God's word, just know anything's possible. Anyway, the language of each people. He knew all these other languages, but not Hebrew. And here comes Nehemiah. I confronted them, and I cursed them, and I beat some of them, and pulled out their hair. I'd love to see all that. Here they are. He beats, he pulls, he curses them. And when he got through beating and cursing and pulling their hair and chasing them with a big switch, he doesn't say that. And I made them take an oath in the name of God, saying, you shall not give your daughters to their sons, or take their daughters for your sons, or for yourselves. Do you guys not know the story of Solomon at all? Did not Solomon, king of Israel, sin on account of such women? Strange women? Now the women get the bad rap here, but it took the guys to bring the strange women in. Especially King Solomon. Solomon did it. Did not Solomon, king of Israel, sin on account of such women among the many nations? There was no king like him. He was beloved by his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, strange women, foreign women, made even him to sin. Shall we then listen to you and do all this great evil and act treacherously against our God by marrying foreign women? You're not obeying the Sabbath. You're disobeying God's law by marrying foreign women that worship all these other gods. You're bringing them into your life. You're bringing them into our life, our culture that is monotheistic, that worships Yahweh. And you don't see a problem with that? One of the sons of Jehoiada, son of Eliashib, the high priest, was the son-in-law. And here's another gentleman of Sanballat. Tobiah, Sanballat, the Horonite. Nehemiah's about to the end. One of his eyes are twitching. And when he saw Sanballat the Horonite, the son-in-law of Sanballat the Horonite, I chased him from me. I love Nehemiah. I chased him from me. He just saw him. He just looked at him. I don't know if he did anything, but he saw this Sanballat's son-in-law, and he just chased him away. I wonder how far they ran. He chased him out of this place, out of this area. I chased him from me. I chased him from me. Verse 29, remember them. And before it's been remember me. He says, remember them, oh my God, because they have desecrated the priesthood. They have desecrated the priesthood and the covenant of the priesthood and the Levites. Thus, I cleanse them from everything foreign, and I establish the duties of the priests. I cleanse them from everything foreign. I establish the duties of the priest and Levites, each in his work. And I provided for the wood offering at appointed times and for the first fruits. Nehemiah got the temple ready to work and serve. Big deal. Big deal. Remember me, oh my God, for good. So, do you see why Nehemiah is so awesome? We should just start again. Next week we're going to start with Nehemiah 1. We're going to do it again. You know, why can't Nehemiah have 66 chapters? You know? Any questions or comments here?
So does this prove that Nehemiah is Pentecostal?
He laid hands on them all right.